High in the rugged backcountry of Montana, where the mountains touched the clouds and rivers ran wild and unbothered, there lived a man people only whispered about. Caleb Rourke. Some called him the mountain ghost. Some said he once fought a bear with his bare hands. Others swore he lived alone because he couldn't stand another human being after tragedy stole everything he once loved. But none of those rumors were entirely true. Caleb was not a ghost. He was a man made of silence, scars, and too much heartbreak for one lifetime. And into his lonely world came her. The train screeched into the tiny Timber Ridge station just as snow began to fall like soft feathers. Among the passengers stepping onto the platform was a young woman clutching a faded satchel and wearing a dress that had clearly seen better days. Lila Merritt. 23. Alone. Running from a life that had done nothing but hurt her. Her father had died the previous winter, the little house they rented was taken, and her stepmother, who never wanted her, sent her away with no more than a few dollars and the bitter words. "Go find work somewhere. You're no use here." So when Lila heard the Timber Ridge Lodge needed a maid for their busiest season, she grabbed the chance. She didn't know snow. She didn't know mountains. She barely knew hope. But she was determined to survive. The lodge manager, Mrs. Audley, eyed her up and down and sighed. "You're late. And smaller than I expected," she muttered. "But hands are hands. Work hard, don't break anything, and don't wander toward the West Ridge. Our neighbor up there doesn't like visitors." Lila had no idea that this warning would be useless, because fate had other plans. 3 days later, the lodge was chaos. Hunters, travelers, traders, everyone tracked mud through the halls, clattered boots on the floors, demanded hot meals and warm beds. Mrs. Audley barked orders like a captain on a sinking ship. "Lila, take breakfast up to cabin 3. Lila grabbed the tray, balancing it carefully as she stepped out into the snowy morning. Cabin 3 sat a little apart from the main lodge, half buried under pine trees. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Still nothing. She hesitated, then pushed the door open. Inside stood the largest, broadest, most intimidating man she had ever seen. Tall as a doorway. Shoulders like chopped timber. Thick dark beard. A long scar running from his temple to his jaw. His shirt was unbuttoned at the top, exposing a chest crisscrossed with old wounds. His eyes, cold blue and piercing, locked on her. "What are you doing in here?" he growled. I'm sorry." Lila stuttered. "Your breakfast, Mrs. Audley said. I didn't ask for breakfast." "Oh. Then I'll just take it back." She turned too quickly, bumped into the table, and the entire tray crashed to the floor. Eggs, toast, and coffee splattered everywhere. Her cheeks burned. "I'm so sorry, sir. But the giant man had gone still. Watching her. Not in anger. In surprise. As if no one had apologized to him in a very, very long time. "It's fine," he said after a long moment. "Just leave it." "No," she whispered, bending down. "I made the mess. All clean." He knelt too, his rough hands reaching to help her. Their fingers brushed. For a moment, they froze. Her breath caught. His eyes softened, just barely. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lila." "Caleb." He stood. "I live up the West Ridge. I don't stay at the lodge often." The West Ridge, where she wasn't supposed to go. She nodded awkwardly, then fled out the door, heart pounding like a drum. That night, She overheard two hunters whispering loudly near the lodge fire. "That man in cabin 3, Caleb Rourke, he ain't right," one muttered. "Lost his fiancée 2 winters ago. Avalanche took her and their cabin. He's been half wild since. Some say he don't talk to women at all," the other added. "Spends winters alone, summers hunting. Folks who wander onto his land don't always return." Lila's heart pinched. He didn't seem dangerous. Just sad. Alone. Like her. She told herself to forget the encounter. Forget his voice. Forget the strange pull she'd felt when their hands touched. But fate didn't forget. 2 weeks later, a blizzard rolled down the mountains with a fury stronger than anything Timber Ridge had seen in years. Wind howled like living creatures. Trees cracked in half. Snow piled higher than roofs. Travelers were trapped. The lodge shook under the storm's force. Just before dusk, Mrs. Audley burst into the laundry room. "Lila. The woodshed collapsed. We're losing heat. Someone must go to the ridge and ask Caleb Rourke to bring his sled. He's the only one strong enough to carry supplies back." Lila's stomach dropped. "Why me?" "Because everyone else is busy. And he liked you well enough last time." Liked. Lila didn't know about that. But she wrapped herself in Caleb's old spare coat the lodge kept and stepped into the raging storm. Snow slapped her face. Wind shoved her sideways. Every step felt like climbing a mountain made of ice. By the time she reached Caleb's cabin, she was shaking uncontrollably. She pounded on the door. It opened instantly, as if he'd been waiting. He stared at her, shocked. "Lila. What the hell are you doing out here? The lodge, woodshed, collapsed. We need help." She didn't finish. Her knees buckled. Caleb lunged forward and caught her before she hit the ground. His arms wrapped around her like steel, lifting her easily. "You're freezing," he muttered, voice tight. "You shouldn't be out in this." He carried her inside, straight to the roaring fire. Caleb wrapped a thick blanket around her shoulders and handed her a cup of something warm. "Drink." Lila obeyed. "You walked all the way here in this storm?" he asked. I had to." "Foolish," he grumbled. "Brave, but foolish." He knelt in front of her, checking her hands, her face, the color returning to her cheeks. No man had ever looked at her like that. Not with ownership. Not with desire. But with worry. Sincere, raw worry. "I'll help the lodge," he finally said. "But you're staying here until the storm eases." "I can't, Mrs. Audley. She'll live. You, on the other hand, nearly froze to death." Lila swallowed hard. There was no arguing with him. Hours passed. The storm grew worse. It became clear she wasn't going anywhere that night. Caleb cooked stew over the fire, thick with meat and vegetables, and pushed a bowl toward her. "I'm not good company," he warned. "Haven't been in years." "I don't mind," she whispered. His eyes lifted to hers. Something shifted in the air between them, something gentle, something dangerous. As the night deepened, Caleb spoke. Slowly. Hesitantly. "My fiancée was named Nora," he said quietly. "We were building a cabin up on the high ridge. The avalanche took her. I tried to dig her out with my bare hands." Lila's heart broke. "I'm so sorry. People think I'm some wild creature," he muttered. "But I just stopped wanting company. Stopped wanting anything." He looked at her again, longer this time. "Until today." Lila felt her cheeks heat. Not out of embarrassment, but longing. She didn't know how to accept such attention. But she wanted to try. Caleb stood suddenly, running a hand through his hair. You should sleep, he said gruffly. Take the bed. I'll take the chair. You. In the chair. That seems unfair. He smirked. A rare, soft expression. I've slept in worse places. But something told her he wasn't avoiding comfort. He was avoiding temptation. And that made her wonder. Did he feel what she felt? Morning brought silence. Soft, white, peaceful. The storm had passed. Caleb walked her back to the lodge, hauling wood and supplies on his sled. Not just a small load, enough to keep the lodge warm for days. Mrs. Audley was shocked. I asked you to bring help, but I didn't expect him to empty half his storage. Caleb grunted. Storms kill. Fire saves. As he turned to leave, his eyes met Lila's. Come by the ridge sometime, he said. If you want. I want. He nodded once, then strode away through the snow. Days became weeks. Whenever Lila finished her duties, she'd walk toward the ridge. Caleb was always there, chopping wood, repairing traps, smoking by the fire. They talked, laughed, argued sometimes too. Caleb was stubborn as stone. He taught her how to track animals, how to set a snare, how to listen to the mountain instead of fearing it. You're tougher than you think, he told her one afternoon. You see something in me no one else ever did, she replied softly. His eyes darkened, warm, intense. I see too much. She felt her chest flutter. People at the lodge noticed. Rumors spread. Why was the mountain man spending time with the maid? Was she trying to trap him? Was he using her? Lila ignored them. But Caleb hated the talk. One evening he stormed into the lodge, furious. Pack your things, he growled softly to her. You're leaving with me. What? I can't. Why? Because you're working yourself to exhaustion for people who don't respect you. Come live on my land. I have a second cabin. You'll have your own room. Your own space. You'll be safe. Safe. No one had ever offered her that before. Why are you doing this for me? She whispered. Caleb looked like a man about to jump off a cliff. Because I care about you more than I should. Her heart stopped. Then started again, faster than ever. Okay, she breathed. I'll come. Life on the ridge was hard. Chopping wood, hauling water, cooking over a fire, but Lila loved every second. She loved the fresh air, the silence, the freedom, and she loved him. Caleb tried to keep his distance at first. Tried to keep things proper. But every day, his resolve cracked a little more. One night, after a long cold day, they stood outside watching the stars. You're shivering, he murmured. I'm fine. He stepped closer. Lila. She looked up at him. That was all it took. Caleb pulled her into his arms, his body warm, strong, overwhelming. She gasped. He kissed her gently, so gently it broke her heart. I didn't want to scare you, he whispered against her lips. You could never scare me, she breathed. He kissed her again, deeper, needier, pulling her tightly against him. In that snowy night, under millions of silent stars, their lonely worlds merged. Spring thawed the mountains. Rivers roared again. Life returned. And so did something in Caleb. One morning he built a small box from polished pine. He lined it with soft leather. Then walked to where Lila was hanging sheets on the line. He stopped in front of her, heart hammering. I used to think I'd never love again, he said. That losing someone once meant I wasn't allowed a second chance. Her eyes softened. But then you came, he continued. Small. Brave. Stubborn. You cleaned up the mess in my cabin like it was nothing, but sweetheart, you cleaned up my heart too. Lila's breath trembled. Caleb dropped to one knee. I don't want a maid, he said. I want a partner. My partner. My wife. Lila, will you stay on this mountain with me, forever? Tears spilled down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. He slipped a simple handmade ring onto her finger, a polished river stone set in silver wire. Not fancy. Not expensive. But perfect. Like him. Years later, travelers who passed through Timber Ridge still heard tales of the mountain man. But the story had changed. They no longer spoke of Caleb Rourke as a ghost or a wild creature. They spoke of him as the man who found love when he least expected it. With the quiet, brave maid who became the heart of his home. On winter nights, when smoke curled from their chimney and laughter echoed off the pines, people often said, the mountain didn't tame him. But she did. And it was true. Because Caleb Rourke, the man the world feared, loved Lila more fiercely than the mountains themselves. She came as a maid. But she became his one true love.